Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the DevOps Day organizers for giving us this opportunity to talk to you today. And we're going to get into do-it-yourself tech inclusion. So this is going to be both for employees and for company leaders. My name is Catherine Enck. As she said, I'm the Director of Operations for Hire and Esquire. We are an innovative and tech-forward legal labor marketplace.
Yep. And as she said, I am Kate Picco. I am the Director of Human Resources and General Counsel for Tonic Design, which is a digital product agency here in Philly specializing in emerging technology. So I'm going to start with the question, what is inclusion? Although this may seem really obvious, it's important to distinguish it from diversity, which in a really basic sense, it's going to do this throughout the presentation, it seems, is just counting people. So it's kind of separating people out and saying, you know, by their protected categories and saying we have so many women, we have so many men. It's really just statistics. And so it's kind of like if your company is doing a marketing campaign and they get every person from an underrepresented group in your company together for a picture, and all of a sudden your company is like a United Colors of Benetton ad. That's kind of diversity, which is distinct from inclusion. Because if you don't prioritize inclusion and you just have diversity, your office can start to look a little bit like this, which is a lonely place if you're the red ball. So nobody wants that. So inclusion really takes diversity one step farther. So instead of just counting people, you are making people count. It's moving, you know, it's just moving beyond the statistics and truly being aware of how your employment practices might be creating obstacles for diverse employees' success and just ability to grow at your company. And the really important key to inclusion is that you are taking active steps to overcome those obstacles. And also, inclusion is an ongoing invitation. It shouldn't be an announcement. It's not just telling people, hey, we're diverse, or come apply for us, and just posting it as an announcement somewhere. It is inherently activist. So reach out to women, reach out to other diverse people, encourage them to apply for your jobs, encourage them to share their ideas in meetings, to lead a project, or just do anything in your company that other successful employees do.
Okay, but why should I care? Why should you care? As this stock photo of business people in a Benjamin Blizzard, which will eventually show up here, shows.
Show me the money.
Is good for business. There are business people. There we go. There's the money. Good for business. So there's a study that came out recently showing that companies in the top quartile for gender diversity are 15% more likely to have higher revenue and be more profitable. There are a few factors that actually affect how inclusion is good for business. And the first is better recruiting. So when you're able to recruit for more diverse backgrounds, you get a broader skill range, you get more approaches to problem solving, and whenever you have an inclusive environment, it tends to get out. It's a really hot topic, so people want to write articles about you, they want to do blog posts, and it ends up attracting more diverse candidates. Additionally, it's better for retention. So a recent Gallup study showed that more diverse teams, including more women, have 22% lower turnover rates than similar companies. And statistics have shown that diverse employees are 3 times more likely to leave an organization because 1, they don't feel part of the company, 2, they don't feel valued, and 3, they don't feel like there's any opportunity for advancement. So our approach and some of the things we're going to talk about today can help you significantly improve the satisfaction for your diverse employees. And finally, it fosters innovation and problem-solving skills. So the whole point of these DevOps days is to break down silos between different work functions, enable better collaboration and communication so that everybody gets a better result. We're advocating for the exact same concept. Instead of between dev and ops, it's between diverse and non-diverse employees. And some of the tips and tricks we're going to tell you about today can and will lead to improved problem solving and innovation in your organization.
So we're going to be focusing predominantly on gender diversity and inclusion, although we will occasionally talk about other areas of minority inclusion during the presentation. We're going to focus on what we've identified as the 4 pillars of workplace inclusion, which are hiring, retention, promotion, and culture. So starting with hiring, it's one of the first areas that employees address when trying to make their companies more inclusive is really just in the job description. And there are 3 things that anyone can do with a job description if you're an employer, how you can write it, or if you're an employee, you can encourage employers to write it or suggest language that will help to ensure that you're not discouraging diverse employees from applying to your job. The first is to separate essential and non-essential qualifications. Focus on a specific skill that a successful employee needs to have mastered in order to succeed at that, in a particular position that you're advertising for. The classic example of this is requiring a college education. If I'm applying to be an Android developer, it really has no bearing on my success as a developer, whether I went to college or not. Maybe I learned how to code in my parents' basement. And that's just fine, because frankly, if I got a degree in poli-sci, it may or may not have any bearing on my success in that position. Also, it's important to keep in mind that having unnecessary education qualifications disproportionately targets and excludes diverse candidates. So just avoid it. Be sure to read through your job postings and ensure that they aren't kind of unnecessarily excluding otherwise qualified applicants. The second thing you can do is focus on what needs to be achieved and not how it's going to be achieved. Focusing on the result rather than the method ensures that you're not excluding qualified candidates who have a disability or who may just otherwise tackle problems differently than you do. If you're kind of setting a prescribed method, you may just kind of be knocking people out of the running that may be a completely stellar person for you in that job. And the last thing is just use plain language. Although I am in HR and I'm a lawyer, avoid HR and legal jargon. It just confuses people and job descriptions. And also, I highly recommend to employers that they run all job descriptions through sites like joblint.org and textio.com. These sites are wonderful because they allow you to take your entire job description, cut and paste it into these sites, and the site will highlight words for you that it views as problematic, either because they have sexist connotations, racist connotations, and then it has a little explanation on the side of why these words are in fact problematic. And this is important because there's just a lot of textual things in job descriptions that you may not even realize may turn off a candidate. It has been shown that job descriptions that use predominantly masculine wording, so things like using words like competitive and dominant, rather than using more feminine wording, which is like collaborative and dedicated, if they have more masculine wording, women find these jobs less appealing. So the point is the words that you use in these things directly impact who, in fact, is going to apply for the job.
Next, we're going to talk about diversifying your candidate pipeline. So one of the really easy ways to do this is advertise on job boards that are specifically targeting women and minorities. There are a ton of them, and for the most part, they're free. So a couple examples are womenforhire.com, blackcareernetwork.com, and employeediversity.com. This is a super easy and free way for you to gain access to new demographics. And next, reach out to affinity groups. Kate and I have worked with several ones here in Philadelphia. Some of them have been the Item, Tech Up, Tech Girls, and Black Girls Code. We've sponsored and hosted events. If you don't have the budget for that, send them your job postings. I've always found that the group leaders are extremely excited to be able to share those job postings with people in their network because they want to see diverse employees placed at great companies. And one group pool of candidates that is often overlooked is mothers. Sometimes employers can be skittish about hiring them because they're worried about them not being able to commit the amount of time to the job that they're looking for. But a recent study has actually shown that mothers are more efficient and more productive than their non-mother peers. And next is interviews. This is an important part of how candidates view your company and whether they want to join it. So take a clue from Google. Google actually has women interview women, and this accomplishes two things. One, it precludes any potential bias. So if you have a group of men interviewing a woman, they may have some bias, some sexist bias that they're not aware of, and they're not holding this person to the exact same standards that they would be a man. Similarly, it signals to the candidate that they're going to receive support once they join your organization. So they know that they're going to have other people they can relate to or that people they can seek out for mentorship. Be mindful of language and perceived bias. So Kate and I, when we worked together, used to hand out an interview cheat sheet to all of the hiring managers and people who would be interviewing. And this just kind of ran down for them, like things you can say in an interview, things you cannot say. So you can ask whether or not someone has the ability to work overtime. You cannot ask them if they are pregnant, plan on getting pregnant, or if they can afford childcare. And there was actually a really great anecdote that kind of sums up perceived bias. So there's a woman of color here in Philadelphia who wrote a story on her blog about going into an interview and a few challenges that she had. And one of them was she was trying to decide whether or not she should wear a wig going into her interview. And the reason was because she knew that for a lot of people, there's perceived bias of Caucasian hair being more professional than natural hair, which obviously has nothing to do with her experience, her qualifications, or her ability to perform in that position. But she had to take that consideration seriously if she wanted to get the job, which is not the position that you want to be in as an employer. And additionally, she remembers sitting in the waiting room to go into this interview and looking up at the walls and seeing all these oil paintings of older white men. And she immediately knew what kind of culture she was going into. So a hiring bias that's completely unrelated to performance. Not only is it wrong, and not only are you going to preclude candidates that could be amazing, but additionally, it's probably illegal. And in interviews, just be consistent. So if you're talking to male and female candidates, don't talk about family-friendly locations in Philadelphia with your female candidates and then talk about sports with your male candidates. Make sure that you're being consistent.
All right, so retention. Obviously, once you get an employee into your office, the ultimate goal for everyone there is to keep them there. And one of the first interactions that employees have with your company after hire is with the office space itself. And having inclusive office spaces isn't just good practice, it's also often a legal requirement. So I'll briefly discuss some of the low-hanging fruit that you can tackle to help make your office space itself more inclusive. The first is regarding basic accessibility. Don't wait until you hire a person with accessibility needs to start thinking about this and actually tackling some of the problem areas. It would be really bad if you had a candidate come in or a client come in that used a wheelchair or had other mobility assisted devices and they couldn't get around your office or couldn't get into the meeting room. So it's really good to start thinking about these things now and hopefully making the changes in your office that would allow people, again, with things like wheelchair, mobility-assisted devices, or even something like the height of your standing desk. Make sure that shorter employees are able to access your standing desk. That was an issue at my office, so it sticks in my head. We had somebody who was 6'7" deciding where the standing desk would go. It was not a success with somebody who is 5'6", and it was literally like this. Another thing to think about are bathrooms. It could be as simple as posting a sign like this. And if you can't do gender neutral, at least have a policy in your handbook that allows people to use the bathroom of their choice. There is a lot of political debate going on right now about this, but mark my word, I can almost guarantee you it will be a legal requirement. So I strongly encourage people to get ahead of the curve on this one. Another thing that I want to highlight, and if you're not a parent, you may not think about it, is creating space in your office for nursing mothers. In Philadelphia, this is a legal requirement. There's a city ordinance that requires all employers to provide private spaces for lactating mothers to express milk. Don't just shove employees in a closet somewhere. It takes very little time and effort and money to throw a chair, some inspiring artwork. If you do these things, you will be miles ahead of your competitors, and the women that have to use that room will be really thankful, and so they'll just be more engaged and overall dedicated to your company. And lastly, artwork and decor. As Catherine mentioned, look around your office. Is it just a bunch of oil paintings of old white men? Even if that is representative of your founders or maybe a majority of your company, you might just want to consider toning it back a bit, diversifying your art portfolio, or just in general making it more neutral. I'm going to shift now to discussing promotions, and I'm going to look at kind of two different types of promotions, self-promotion as well as career pathing. There's two very simple ways that you can help women and other minority employees promote themselves in your company. And the first is called amplification. Obama's female staffers adopted this strategy during their meetings, and it's when a woman makes a key point, another woman in the room would echo that point, giving credit to the original author. This prevented kind of the men in the room. It forced them to recognize the contribution and also made it so that they couldn't claim it as their own. But more importantly, over time, they realized that they were being called on more and that the men themselves were participating in the amplification process. So it just proved to be a really successful strategy, again, for Obama's female staffers. And another way to help employees promote themselves are by offering or participating in workshops. Google's a really good example of this. They created workshops that encouraged women to nominate themselves for promotions. I know that Catherine's work also did this, so I'm going to let her talk briefly about that.
Yeah, so actually at Hire and Esquire, we have a female CEO. And so since the inception of the company, she's made it an initiative to coach and mentor female employees on how to ask for raises and how to ask for promotions. And one, that's amazing because they can take that anywhere they go. And second, it's a really small step, but it's really significant in closing the gender wage gap.
So in addition to self-promotion, it's really important that companies also establish career pathing for diverse employees. So career pathing is really just about creating an environment in which diverse employees can grow and succeed just the same as any employee in the company. One option for inclusive career pathing is offering mentoring. Microsoft has mentor rings for their female employees in which they gain kind of tips and guidance from more senior, seasoned employees at the company. And this is a really good way to integrate, develop, and just retain employees at your company. And the good thing is it really benefits everybody involved. So, you know, the mentor gets kind of the inherent benefit of helping somebody and kind of giving them guidance and seeing them grow and succeed. And the mentee gets to learn these tips and tricks from a seasoned employee, and I think more importantly, hopefully gains an ally that will advocate for them with senior management, particularly if they themselves are not in a position to do so. And another thing that all employers should do is encourage, if you're an employee or if you're an employer, perform regular audits of things like promotions, salaries, other metrics such as hiring, to see if there is an adverse impact or if there's some sort of issue with an issue based on like a protected category. So you might actually be surprised. You might think that you work for an inclusive or diverse company, but when you actually see the statistics set out in front of you, you might be surprised about some of the areas that you truly need to work on.
So one of the big things people think of when they think about inclusion is the workplace culture. And we're going to look at a few different things: leadership buy-in, communication, policies, and education. So first, leadership buy-in is an absolute necessity. If your leaders don't believe in inclusion, then there's only so much that you can do as an employee. And showing that diversity is important to the rest of the company is key for the leadership. And they need to do this from everything from their strategic vision of the company and where it's going to their day-to-day language with employees. Every organization is coming from a unique standpoint. They're all coming from unique contexts, but every organization has room for improvement. Communication, obviously this is key to inclusion. Share and discuss progress. So a great example of this is Slack. They actually publish regular diversity reports to their company. And these are some examples of some of the charts that they use. They're really easy to read. You can see at a glance which departments are diverse, which ones are not. And it keeps the conversation going, and it also keeps the employer transparent and honest about their efforts to improve diversity and inclusion. And next, collect feedback. There are a variety of ways that you can do this. If you want people to be anonymous and be more honest, you can do an anonymous feedback form. You can do surveys. Something that Kate and I actually found to be really successful was book clubs. So one of our employees at Tonic started a Lean In book club, and it gave us an opportunity to get people talking and listen to the female employees and their experiences in various departments, which we found sometimes were very different, and give them an opportunity to voice concerns. You want to foster conversations, and you want to hear what people have to say without trying to explain it away or cut them off or put a damper on it. These are the kinds of things that you don't want to be hearing for the first time in an exit interview or after someone's already left the company and you go out and get a drink with them.
Right. One of the most legally significant ways that an employer communicates with its employees are through its policies and procedures. When addressing things like benefits, I strongly encourage all employees to advocate to their employers for flexible work leave and paid time off, especially paid parental leave. I've had probably the most favorable feedback from an employee was centered on our very generous paid parental leave, which allows both birthing and non-birthing parents to take paid time off. And so just recently, we had a male employee who took several paid weeks off after the birth of his daughter. He came back, and he found, I think I was the first person he found in the office to come thank me because we established that policy when Catherine was at the office. And he was nothing but thankful. And you know what? It benefits the employer because he was much more engaged, and he was very loyal after coming back at that. So it really does benefit everybody involved. And when drafting and communicating any policy, just like with a job description, use clear language and make sure that it's gender neutral. If you want to be on the cutting edge and really progressive, end of things, ditch gendered pronouns altogether. There are a panoply of gender neutral pronouns such as they and ze that you can use throughout things, policies and handbooks. And then in addition to bathrooms, all handbooks and all policies should include extraordinarily robust anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, and anti-retaliation policies. I am a lawyer. These policies at my company are probably longer than they need to be at anybody else's company, but they should be very robust because there is no quicker way to ensure that diverse candidates leave your company than to allow discrimination and harassment to run rampant. So if you witness something or you are the one who is addressing a complaint, address it quickly and make sure that nothing is swept under the rug. I also encourage everyone to review their dress code. A lot of policies and a lot of handbooks tend to be pretty dated. Some employers do annual reviews, others don't. But I always want people to look at that just to make sure that they're not discriminating against certain groups of people. Something that comes to mind is requiring women to wear heels. Some women love heels. I do not. I find them really uncomfortable. So if I saw a policy like that in a handbook, it would personally turn me off from that company. So I also want to flag, just for everybody here, if you ever see a policy that's banning religious or ethnic attire, such as yarmulkes or hijabs, it is probably illegal, and I would flag it for your employer.
Next, we're going to talk about education. So an educational approach to inclusion helps everyone feel more comfortable. Both managers and employees often fear that they are going to say the wrong thing, that they're going to be perceived as discriminatory, or that rigid rules of political correctness are going to stifle their environment. When you nurture an environment where mistakes can be used as a learning opportunity instead of an opportunity to shame people, it allows everybody to kind of come to the table and learn together. So there are a few different ways to educate. There are formal avenues like diversity training. If you are an HR manager or you are leadership in your company, you can check with your payroll provider or your HR consultant. They usually provide this as part of packages, so you might be paying for it and not even know it. A couple different trainings. One is style and pattern of communication. So a lot of companies have found that the Myers-Briggs type indicator test is a great way to get the conversation started and help people learn how to deal with conflict. Sometimes people don't have a real problem, they just have an issue communicating or understanding each other. And being able to identify how people learn, process information, and communicate with each other can really assist in getting over those kinds of issues. Next, encourage your colleagues or your employees not to make assumptions about their colleagues' self-identity or orientation. When you make those kinds of assumptions, it's not only detrimental, but it's automatically exclusive. That person doesn't feel like they can be themselves in your presence anymore. When you ditch assumptions, everybody feels welcome and comfortable in that environment. And then a few informal ways are happy hours, team building, exercises, book clubs, and team rotation. Sometimes people just can't empathize with each other in the work setting because they feel stressed to perform or there are deadlines and they don't really have the time to think about you because they're thinking about themselves. So sometimes just getting out of the office and allowing people to see each other as people and understand them allows them to sort of get over certain issues that they might have.
So we can only eliminate the problem if we intentionally intercept and disrupt current practices. So we're just going to briefly summarize some of the things that you can do as an employee or as a person running your company to help create a more inclusive environment.
So update your documents, review job postings, procedures. If you see anything there that's a problem, let your HR manager know. And offer robust and progressive benefits. And if you're not directly involved in that, you can always flag it for someone and let them know that you think it needs to be revised.
So communicate and educate. This is my favorite. Offer to give trainings, lead book clubs, become a mentor, reach out to affinity groups, sponsor them, host them. Just otherwise get active, take an active step to creating a more inclusive work environment. And just in general, hold yourself and your employer accountable on their diversity and inclusion efforts.
And finally, just remember to be respectful and treat people the way that they wish to be treated, which may not be the way that you wish to be treated. Be an ally, be an advocate, and be invested in diversity and inclusion. So thank you for your time. We hope that this gives you a good starting point. If you guys have any questions, I don't know if we still have time for questions.
Thank you so much for the talk. That was a lot of really great tips.
A lot of information.
And I appreciate that you gave some really actionable stuff that people could, start on. Especially in tech environments where people might look around their office and find that almost everyone looks like them, and if you're hiring through referral, then that's just going to keep happening, possibly. Yeah. What would you recommend doing to either for the companies or for individuals to try to make it so they look around the office and not everybody looks like them?
Sure. I guess I can jump in on this first. So one of the great things that Catherine had mentioned that we do at Tonic is really associating ourselves with affinity groups. I think that has probably been the number one way, at least that I've seen since I've been there, that we've just been able to get really, qualified, diverse candidates coming. So we reach out to the item, we have them sponsor, and we had several people from the item apply to our next job posting. So I think something like that really helps. And we have people, so it's not just the employer reaching out, being like, we can host you, come help. Our employees are also joining Girl Develop It and helping lead classes there. So I think really just kind of getting out into the community, into these groups and organizations and saying, hey, we'd love to have your members or people that work with you apply to our jobs or come to our office and check us out. We think we're great. Hopefully you will as well. And the runner needs a round of applause because I can't run this early in the morning, so. Thank you. It's quite a job. It's an athletic job in here.
Hi. Quick question. Do you think that blind interviews is a practical possibility?
Lying in interviews?
No, blind.
Oh.
Blind.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Probably got a lot of it, but.
Yeah, so I think that has been, there's been some really interesting studies around blind interviews. Sometimes they're really successful. It kind of depends on how you set it up too. Like if you're doing a technical interview, I think that's great because you're just looking at someone's code, right? But if you have like written responses and things like that, sometimes bias still comes through. Like women tend to handle written communication differently than men do sometimes. So I think it really depends on how you structure your blind interview, but I think it can be a really successful way to do that. The only problem with that is it's kind of hard to like get a sense of how well someone's going to mesh with your team if you're doing a blind interview, which can be really important. Like talking about the different communication styles and the different learning styles, you want to have someone who's going to complement your team. And that shouldn't have anything to do with bias. It just has to do with like personality. Yeah. It's a great question though, thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? All right.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.